born in 1969. I have 3 brothers. I lived in Queens, New York. My mother couldn't hear. My father left us when we were 4. We were the poor family in a middle-class neighborhood. And all I could think of in my mind was that I was going to become successful, that I was going to make a whole lot of money. By the time I was 13, 14 years old, I had dropped out of high school. I began to drink and do drugs. At 18 years old, I became a bookie. By the time I was 27 years old, I had a flourishing business. I was drinking all the time. I was hanging out with women all the time. I had a beautiful apartment and I had a Jaguar convertible, and I was miserable. And in my misery, I got down on my knees and remembered what a priest had told me when I was 11 years old, that Jesus loved me. I continued to be a bookie, though I started to go on missionary trips. I went to the southern part of Sudan. I snuck in through Uganda with the Shekinah Fellowship Ministries. We built an orphanage there. We began to feed the poor. They were being mutilated and massacred by the northern Sudanese, our brothers and sisters. But all the while, I continued to be a bookie. I ended up continuing in that way until 2003. I had 2 children. I lived in Pennsylvania. I had gotten married to my wife. And I decided that I was done. I could no longer do this. But in 2005, May 18th, a knock at the door at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was the Pennsylvania State Police. They arrested me, told me that it would be about a $10,000 bail. I was later to find out it was $1 million bail. We were front page of every New York newspaper as well as the national news throughout this country. Eventually, I pled out to a 1 to 3 sentence. I was incarcerated in January, right after my youngest son was born. I was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, manic depressive, as well as bipolar. It was then that I thought that my life would never be the same. While I was in prison, I began to have a mental breakdown. I started to scratch my arms until they bled. I began to black and blue the back of my neck to the point in which they had to take me to Attica to the psychiatric ward. They put me on a suicide watch for 46 hours. And in that suicide watch, I remember that God continued to speak to me. And then I heard the voice from God, the inaudible voice that happens inside of us. And he said, while you were yet a sinner, I died for you. It was there that I felt my guilt and my shame began to be removed. Prior to being released from prison, I needed to find a job. It was then that Pastor Lenny Lucetti of the Stroudsburg Wesleyan Church, the church in which I had been attending about 6 months prior to me being arrested, he offered me a job. And in this job, I was to be the maintenance person, though I didn't know how to even change a doorknob. He wanted me to be on staff. We began a program called the Celebrate Recovery. We began to do different things here to reach out into the community, but also to reach into the church and become a hospital for those who are hurting. And it was at this time that Flame came to the Stroudsburg Wesleyan Church. It was there that I found people who would encourage me, people who would accept me, people who would love me and tell me that I could be so much more than I could ever dream of. God had freed me from drug abuse, from alcoholism, from gambling addiction, for internet pornography, from the desire for wealth, money. He had taken away my security and my understanding of who I was as a bookmaker, and he gave me a security that was founded fully in the love of Jesus Christ. And as I followed him, he began to do a new work in me and through me. And it's through this new work that I got ordained. I sit here today as the co-lead pastor of the Stroudsburg Wesleyan Church, seeking and desiring to touch the world with the same love that God touched me with.